We are going to figure out how to identify the mental baggage holding us back when the world just turns upside down. The class is discussing that original cheese book, talking about how to adapt to change. But then a young man in the back of the class named Tim raises his hand and asks a question that just brings the whole room to a dead halt.
He asks, because Hem was the character in the original fable who flat out refused to change. When the cheese disappeared from their usual spot, his friend Haw eventually ventured out into the unknown maze to find new cheese.
But Hem just stayed behind.
Exactly. He stayed behind in the empty cheese station. He was angry. He felt entitled to the old cheese. And he just sat there waiting for things to go back to normal.
And Tim, the guy in the seminar, he admits that he relates to Hem the most. He says he is feeling genuinely stuck in his own life, and he wants to know what happened to the guy who got left behind.
Which is such a relatable feeling.
Right. And that haunting question launches us into the new fable. We zoom straight back into the maze, right into Hem's miserable current reality to see what being stuck actually looks like on a psychological level.
And the psychology here is, well, it's textbook trauma response.
Yeah.
Hem is pacing around Cheese Station C, just fuming. He feels completely betrayed by his friend Haw for leaving him.
Oh, for sure.
But underneath the anger, there's this paralyzing, stubborn expectation. He is bargaining with reality, basically assuming the change is just a temporary glitch.
He literally expects that if he just stands his ground long enough, the universe will correct itself. The days are passing, he is starving, and no new cheese is magically appearing.
No, it's not.
So Hem finally decides he has to do something. He digs around and finds his old tools, a heavy hammer and a chisel that he and Haw used to use to knock holes in the walls looking for cheese.
And this is where we see the first major mental trap. Before he sets out, Hem writes down what he calls his facts of the matter.
Oh, his list.
Yeah, he writes 3 things. 1, if I don't find cheese, I'll die. 2, the maze is dangerous. And 3, it's up to me, I'm on my own.
Right.
He puts his list in his pocket, slings this giant heavy bag of tools over his shoulder, and marches out into the maze.
No, wait a minute. I want to push back on this a little bit, because as I was reading this part, I thought, isn't Hem actually doing the right thing here?
How do you mean?
Well, every self-help guru, every business coach preaches the value of grit, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are taught to hustle, to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. If you want a result, you try harder. So it's like a lumberjack trying to cut down a tree with a dull axe. At least he's swinging.
Right. It's a very common reaction. But it misses the fundamental mechanism of what's keeping him stuck. There's a massive difference between productive effort and the sunk cost fallacy.
Okay. Unpack that a bit.
Well, Hem genuinely believes his core problem is just a lack of effort. He tells himself, I just haven't tried hard enough. So his solution is to double down on his old methods.
Even though they aren't working.
Exactly. He is lugging around heavy, entirely useless tools to smash holes in brick walls simply because that's what worked in the past. He is launching a new quest with old baggage.
Ah, so it's like running an outdated operating system on a new computer. It doesn't matter how much processing power or grit you throw at it. If you're running old software on a completely new reality, the system is going to crash.
Precisely. The brain loves efficiency. It builds neural pathways based on past successes, and it resists dismantling them because that requires cognitive calories.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah. So Hem's brain is tricking him into thinking he just needs to swing the hammer harder rather than asking if he should be swinging a hammer at all.
And that outdated operating system quickly burns out his battery. His flawed strategy of just trying harder leads him to total physical and mental exhaustion. He's wandering, starving, getting weaker every day.
But this physical exhaustion actually serves a vital purpose, strangely enough,
How so?
because it breaks down his cognitive defenses. His brain is too depleted to maintain its rigid walls, which sets the stage for a totally paradigm-shattering encounter. He falls asleep in an empty corridor and wakes up to find a stranger watching him.
Right, this new character, a little person named Hope. And Hope lives at a place called Fruit Station.
Yeah.
And she offers him a small, shiny red rock, an apple.
And Hem's reaction is just wild. He is literally starving to death. But he looks at the apple and says, whatever it is, I can't eat it. I only eat cheese.
He completely rejects a life-saving solution. What is the psychological mechanism there? Why on earth does human nature compel us to reject the apple when we are literally dying of hunger?
It goes right back to the neuroscience of identity and belief. Remember that list Hem wrote down?
His facts of the matter.
Right. Hem has absolute, unquestioned certainty that cheese is the only food that exists. When Hope presents the apple, It doesn't just challenge his diet. It challenges his entire understanding of reality.
It threatens his worldview.
Exactly. And functional MRI scans show that when our core beliefs are challenged, the brain's amygdala lights up the exact same way it does when we face a physical threat to our bodies.
Wait, really? The brain can't tell the difference?
Nope. The brain treats a threat to your worldview as a threat to your life. Hem rejects the apple because his brain is protecting his identity over his actual survival.
That is deeply unsettling. I mean, think about the facts you hold about your own industry or your own relationships. How often are we staring at an apple, starving, but refusing to eat it because we've labeled ourselves as people who only eat cheese?
It's the ultimate trap. What we constantly view as immutable, concrete facts are very often just how we see things. They're constructs.
Facts are just how we see things. Wow. But, starvation is an incredibly powerful motivator. Eventually, Hem's biological hunger overrides his cognitive dissonance.
Thank goodness.
Right. He takes a tiny bite of the apple. He realizes it's sweet, it's juicy, and more importantly, it gives him his energy back. It doesn't kill him.
And his fundamental reality shatters. He realizes he was completely wrong. So he and Hope start talking. And she reveals that her apples have been mysteriously disappearing lately, too.
So they team up.
Yeah, they decide to search the maze together. But even with this new reality, Hem is still clinging to his old habits.
Oh, the bag of tools.
Yes. Every day they go out searching, he is dragging that incredibly heavy bag with the hammer and the chisel. And finally, Hope looks at him and asks a very simple, very irritating question.
I love this part.
She says, "Has that worked for you before? Does making holes in the wall actually find you more cheese?"
And Hem gets instantly defensive. He gets offended because, again, he feels like these tools, these old methods, are inextricably tied to who he is.
Right, because his identity is tied to the tool. I am a guy with a hammer, therefore I must smash walls.
Exactly. But Hope's questioning forces him to look inward. He realizes that if his facts about food were flawed, he has to examine his facts about how the world works.
And he remembers a note his friend Haw had scratched on a wall years ago. Old beliefs do not lead you to new cheese.
Which is the turning point of the entire narrative. Hem takes a stone and actually writes his own definition of a belief on the wall. He defines it simply, a belief is a thought that I trust is true. Just a thought.
Just a thought.
Wait, let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure.
If a belief is just a thought, and I detach my identity from it, doesn't that make me totally ungrounded? I mean, if I just change my mind whenever things get hard, aren't I just a hypocrite with no convictions? It's like changing your favorite sports team just because they're having a losing season.
That is exactly the fear that keeps people stuck in the maze. Hem is terrified of changing his beliefs because he assumes those beliefs make him who he is. He says, if I change them, who would I be? I wouldn't be him.
Right, you'd be someone else.
But the breakthrough, and arguably the most crucial distinction in all the source material, is realizing this. You are not your beliefs. You are the person who chooses your beliefs.
You are the chooser.
You are the chooser. Changing what you think doesn't change your core identity. It merely changes your strategy. Hem suddenly realizes that his old beliefs weren't just thoughts. They were the literal bars of a prison.
Wow.
He was a prisoner of his own trust in a false thought. He realizes that beliefs do one of two things. They either lift you up, like trusting Hope and eating the apple, or they hold you down, like dragging around a bag of heavy tools.
So by realizing he is the chooser, Hem gains a new superpower. He can audit his own thoughts, but he still has a very physical, pressing problem, right?
They're running out of food entirely.
Exactly, and they have searched every inch of the maze they know.
Knowing you can change your beliefs is only step one. Step two is applying that cognitive flexibility to solve a seemingly impossible problem.
So Hope, who acts almost like the Socrates of this whole story, keeps asking these paradigm-shifting questions. She asks him, before, when your cheese was still appearing, where did it come from?
And Hem is stunned. He realizes he and Ha never asked that.
Never. They never looked at the supply chain. They just accepted that the cheese was there, and then they were angry when it wasn't.
They never questioned the source of their success or their sustenance. They treated it like a law of physics rather than a process they could understand.
Exactly. So Hope suggests something truly radical. She says, I wonder what's outside the maze. And Hem's immediate reaction is to think she's crazy. To him, there is no outside. The maze is all there is. He has been, well, hemmed in his entire life.
But because he now knows he is the chooser of his beliefs, he catches himself. He stops his brain's automatic threat response.
That's huge.
It is. He decides to test a new hypothesis. He chooses a radical new belief and writes it down. There are no limits to what you can believe. And then he adds a crucial corollary. Sometimes you have to believe it before you can see it.
Now hold on. Believe it before you can see it. Isn't it incredibly dangerous to blindly believe in an outside without any empirical proof? Isn't that just straight up delusion? I mean, we are taught to make data-driven decisions.
Well, it sounds like delusion if you treat it as blind faith. But what Hem is actually doing is applying the scientific method to his own mindset. It's a working hypothesis.
Okay, I'm listening.
Because Hem had always believed the maze was inherently dangerous, his behavior reflected that belief. He and Haw used to actively avoid all the dark corners and blind alleys. Their fear dictated their boundaries, which prevented them from gathering new data.
Ah, so changing the belief changes the behavior, which then allows you to find new data.
Exactly. Because Hem now believed an exit was possible, his behavior completely changed. He didn't just sit there hallucinating an exit. He and Hope took a candle, and instead of avoiding the dark corners, they deliberately explored them. Opening the door to possibility allowed them to take actions they previously considered unthinkable.
So they drop the heavy bag of useless tools, they take a single candle, and they walk right into the darkest, most terrifying blind alley they can find. And because they brought light into that darkness, instead of avoiding it, they find something. A tiny window, a door. They feel a breeze of fresh air, they crawl through this tight little tunnel, and suddenly they emerge out of the maze entirely.
The contrast is beautifully described in the text. They leave the cold, rigid brick walls and emerge into a bright, dazzling, beautiful green meadow.
Boundless apples, boundless cheese, everything they ever wanted. And they even reunite with Haw and the mice, Sniff and Scurry. It's a joyful reunion.
It really is.
And in that moment, Hem pulls out that old piece of paper from his pocket, his facts of the matter, and he just laughs at it. Every single fact his brain had hardwired as objective reality was completely wrong. He didn't die without cheese, the dark corners weren't just dangerous, and he wasn't on his own.
The fable itself resolves perfectly there. But the deep dive doesn't end, because the source material brilliantly shifts us back to the real world. We return to that Chicago seminar to interweave these abstract concepts with concrete boardroom reality.
Yes, because talking about mice and mazes is a great thought experiment. But Dennis, the seminar leader, brings it right into the modern economy. They start discussing how these rigid, unchanging beliefs, these facts of the matter, literally destroy massive, seemingly invincible, real-world companies.
The group starts throwing out historical examples, and when you analyze them through the lens of a Hem's hammer, the psychology is identical. They bring up the Titanic.
Right. The entire world, including the engineers and the crew, believed the Titanic was unsinkable. That wasn't just marketing, that was the word everyone used as an operational reality.
And because they held that belief as a concrete fact, they didn't bother packing enough lifeboats.
Over 1,500 people die because of a thought they trusted was true.
And it happens in modern business constantly. The seminar dives into Blockbuster Video. Blockbuster wasn't run by stupid people, but they had a fact written on their metaphorical wall. People will always drive to stores to rent movies, and we make our real money off late fees. Yeah, so when streaming arrived, when the Apple was offered, it threatened their identity as a brick-and-mortar giant. Their brain treated the new data as a threat, so they rejected it.
It's the exact same mechanism. Polaroid was completely sure people would always want their photos printed on little paper squares. Bookstores in the early 90s looked at the internet and said, an online bookstore is never going to amount to much.
Exactly.
They all built their entire corporate futures on beliefs they treated as unquestionable facts. And because they refused to drop the hammer, they sank.
But one of the students in the seminar, a doctor named Mia, brings up a very valid concern. She pushes back, much like you did earlier. She says, wait, are all beliefs bad? Do they just get us into trouble if we have to constantly rewrite our operating system? How do we stand for anything?
Right. If you're a medical professional or an accountant or a teacher listening to this right now, you can't just abandon all your principles the second your industry shifts. You'd be completely unmoored.
Exactly. And this is where Dennis, the seminar leader, makes a critical distinction that saves the entire philosophy from becoming just chaotic relativism. He points out the difference between adaptable beliefs and core values.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, he asked Dr. Mia why she became a doctor in the first place. She says to help ease people's suffering. Dennis points out that this isn't just a circumstantial belief. That is a core value.
It's the bedrock of who she is. Or like Brooke, another character in the class who is a publisher. Her core value is a passion for truth and excellence in the written word.
Right. Core values are the compass. They are constant. But circumstantial beliefs, like the specific medical technology Mia uses to deliver care, or the digital format Brick uses to publish that truth, those are just the current tools in the bag.
And those tools have to change.
Those must adapt as the world turns. As one student brilliantly puts it, the core values are true, but everything else changes.
And it's not just a corporate exercise. This hits on a deeply personal level, too, which is the beauty of this framework. Tim, the young man who asked what about him in the first place, opens up to the class.
Yeah, this part is powerful.
He shares that his parents are getting a divorce, and he admits, with a lot of vulnerability, that he is furious. He realizes he has been acting exactly like him in the empty cheese station.
He says his parents' marriage was the one sure thing in his world, his personal bedrock. And he is stubbornly, angrily demanding that things stay the same.
He refuses to accept their new reality because he is holding on to the belief that they should just stick together and work it out, regardless of how miserable they actually are.
Dennis gently points out that Tim's belief, while totally understandable, is holding him down. It's keeping him trapped in a maze of his own making, running in circles of resentment.
Detaching his identity from the belief that his parents must be married for him to be okay doesn't mean he has to like the divorce.
Not at all.
But auditing that belief allows him to stop swinging a heavy hammer at a brick wall. It allows him to stop fighting a reality he just cannot control.
Which leads to the ultimate revelation of the entire seminar, really tying the fable, the corporate case studies, and the personal struggles all together. Alex, a guy who works in the tech industry and has been struggling with how fast his field is changing, finally speaks up. He synthesizes the whole lesson perfectly.
Yeah, Alex has this massive moment of clarity. He says, "The maze I need to get out of isn't my job or my company or even my industry." He says, "The maze I need to get out of is my own thinking."
It is such a profound realization. The physical circumstances of the world, the disappearing cheese, the shifting industries, the technological disruptions, the personal upheavals, those are just the environment. They are just the weather.
Right.
The actual maze that traps us, the walls that prevent us from moving forward, are constructed entirely of our own rigid thoughts.
So if we look at what this all means for you, listening right now, adapting to change isn't about just gritting your teeth and swinging a hammer harder at a brick wall. Productive effort isn't lugging around old baggage from your last job or your last relationship.
Exactly.
True adaptation is about auditing your own beliefs. It's about recognizing that you are the chooser. You are not your thoughts. Not everything you think is an objective fact sometimes. A fact is just the way you are currently choosing to see things.
And if that current way of seeing things is keeping you trapped in an empty room, you have the power to change your mind without losing your identity.
You can put down the heavy tools. You can bring a candle into the dark corners.
You know, we all spend an enormous amount of energy optimizing how we run through our daily mazes. We tweak our morning routines, we streamline our workflows, we refine the arguments we have with our partners or our colleagues. We just try to run faster and faster.
We really do.
But when was the last time you stopped running? Put down your tools and ask yourself if the maze you are navigating so furiously is actually one you built yourself.